Okay, welcome to the 117th episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional. We have finally arrived at the central truth. We are reading Progress and Poverty, an inquiry into the cause of industrial depressions and increase of want with increase of wealth, the remedy. Published in 1879 at the tail end of the Long Depression, which was originally called the Great Depression, which got renamed to the Long Depression when we had the Great Depression. George writes here in chapter 10, which is the Law of Human Progress, chapter 5. Book 10, Law of Human Progress, chapter 5, Central Truth. In the short space to which this latter part of our inquiry is necessarily confined, I have been obliged to omit much that I would like to say, and to touch briefly where an exhaustive consideration would not be out of place. Nevertheless, this at least is evident, that the truth to which we were led in the politico-economic branch of our inquiry is as clearly apparent in the rise and fall of nations and the growth and decay of civilizations, and that it accords with those deep-seated recognitions of relation and sequence that we denominate moral perceptions. Thus have been given to our conclusions the greatest certitude and highest sanction. This truth involves both a menace and a promise. It shows that the evils arising from the unjust and unequal distribution of wealth, which are becoming more and more apparent as modern civilization goes on, are not incidents of progress, but tendencies which must bring progress to a halt. That they will not cure themselves, but on the contrary must, unless their cause is removed, grow greater and greater until they sweep us back into barbarism by the road every previous civilization has trod. But it also shows that these evils are not imposed by natural laws, that they spring solely from social maladjustments which ignore natural laws, and that in removing their cause we shall be giving an enormous impetus to progress. The poverty which in the midst of abundance pinches and imbrutes men, and all the manifold evils which flow from it, spring from a denial of justice. In permitting the monopolization of the opportunities which nature freely offers to all, we have ignored the fundamental law of justice. For, so far as we can see when we view things upon a large scale, justice seems to be the supreme law of the universe. But by sweeping away this injustice and asserting the rights of all men to natural opportunities, we shall conform ourselves to the law. We shall remove the great cause of unnatural inequality in the distribution of wealth and power. We shall abolish poverty, tame the ruthless passions of greed, dry up the springs of vice and misery, light in dark places the lamp of knowledge, give new vigor to invention and a fresh impulse to discovery, substitute political strength for political weakness, and make tyranny and anarchy impossible. The reform I have proposed accords with all that is politically, socially, or morally desirable. It has the qualities of a true reform, for it will make all other reforms easier. What is it but the carrying out in letter and spirit of the truth enunciated in the Declaration of Independence, the self-evident truth that is the heart and soul of the Declaration, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights are denied when the equal right to land, on which and by which men alone can live, is denied. Equality of political rights will not compensate for the denial of the equal right to the bounty of nature. Political liberty, oh, hello Ian Trossayer in the chat. Equality of political rights will not compensate for the denial of the equal right to the bounty of nature. Political liberty, when the equal right to land is denied, becomes, as population increases and invention goes on, merely the liberty to compete for employment at starvation wages. This is the truth that we have ignored. And so there come beggars in our streets and tramps on our roads, and poverty enslaves men who we boast are political sovereigns. And want breeds ignorance that our schools cannot enlighten, and citizens vote as their masters dictate, and the demagogue usurps the part of the statesman, and gold weighs in the scales of justice. And in high places sit those who do not pay to civic virtue even the compliment of hypocrisy, and the pillars of the republic that we thought so strong already bend under an increasing strain. We honor liberty in name and in form. We set up her statues and sound her praises, but we have not fully trusted her, and with our growth so grow her demands. She will have no half service. Liberty, it is a word to conjure with, not to vex the ear in empty boastings. For liberty means justice, and justice is the natural law. The law of health and symmetry and strength, of fraternity and cooperation. Those who look upon liberty as having accomplished her mission when she has abolished hereditary privileges and given men the ballot, who think of her as having no further relations to the everyday affairs of life, have not seen her real grandeur. To them, the poets who have sung of her must seem rhapsodists, and her martyrs fools. As the sun is the Lord of life as well as of light, as his beams not merely pierce the clouds, but support all growth, supply all motion, and call forth from what would otherwise be a cold and inert mass all the infinite diversities of being and beauty, so is liberty to mankind. It is not for an abstraction that men have toiled and died, that in every age the witnesses of liberty have stood forth and the martyrs of liberty have suffered. We speak of liberty as one thing, and of virtue, wealth, knowledge, invention, national strength, and national independence as other things. But of all these, liberty is the source, the mother, the necessary condition. She is to virtue what light is to color, to wealth what sunshine is to grain, to knowledge what eyes are to sight. She is the genius of invention, the brawn of natural strength, the spirit of national independence. Where liberty rises, there virtue grows, wealth increases, knowledge expands, invention multiplies human powers, and in strength and spirit the freer nation rises among her neighbors as Saul amid his brethren, taller and fairer. King Saul. Where liberty sinks, there virtue fades, wealth diminishes, knowledge is forgotten, invention ceases, and empires once mighty in arms and arts become a helpless prey to freer barbarians. Yeah, the connection between justice and wealth is mostly one forgotten and shied away from, or even like rejected by society. We have just an association of wealth with injustice. But like clearly that is when you're considering individuals within a society. And what's important, or what George is stressing here, is the society as a whole, the law of human progress that he's arguing for, of association and equality of justice, sure seems forgotten. Or just people don't believe it. Only, yep, Ian says, many economic philosophies entirely ignore equality of opportunity as it relates to liberty. liberty is constrained by material wealth. hmm Or lack of wealth. hmm George continues, only in broken gleams and partial light has the sun of liberty yet beamed among men. But all progress hath she called forth. Liberty came to a race of slaves crouching under Egyptian whips, and led them forth from the house of bondage. She hardened them in the desert and made of them a race of conquerors. The free spirit of the Mosaic law took their thinkers up to heights where they beheld the unity of God and inspired their poets with strains that yet phrase the highest exaltations of thought. Liberty dawned on the Phoenician coast, and ships passed the Pillars of Hercules to plow the unknown seas. She shed a partial light on Greece, and marble grew to shapes of ideal beauty. Words became the instruments of subtlest thought, and against the scanty militia of free cities, the countless hosts of the great king broke like surges against a rock. Is that Alexander the Great? I guess. I'm not sure. Of course, gotta point out, especially with Ian, the sortitionist in chat, that Aristotle's Constitutions papyrus had not yet been published in English as of the time of this writing. There was not a large awareness of sortition democracy. Uh, she cast her beams, this is Liberty again, cast her beams on the 4-acre farms of Italian husbandmen. Interesting. Is he talking about the latifundia, which he criticized, I thought, as that was the landlords, but you initially have the good farming people that use land well, and then you have the, what's the term? I don't know, the estates that come in later. So she cast her beams, and born of her strength a power came forth that conquered the world. Ah, yes, the Roman Empire. I get it. They glinted from shields of German warriors, and Augustus wept his legions. Uh, is that the Byzantine, or is Augustus wept his legions? Out of the night that followed her eclipse, her slanting rays fell again on free cities, and a lost learning revived. Modern civilization began, a new world was unveiled, and as liberty grew, so grew art, wealth, power, knowledge, and refinement. In the history of every nation, we may read the same truth. It was the strength born of Magna Carta that won Crecy and Agincourt. It was the revival of liberty from the despotism of the Tudors that glorified the Elizabethan age. It was the spirit that brought a crowned, excuse me. It was the spirit that brought a crowned tyrant to the block, that planted here the seed of a mighty tree. It was the energy of ancient freedom that, the moment it had gained unity, made Spain the mightiest power of the world, only to fall to the lowest depth of weakness when tyranny succeeded liberty. John Babby in the chat. Hey man, how are you, buddy? I'm doing okay. How are you? I know lots of Johns. I don't know if I know a John Babby. Are you gonna offer to make uh, uh, emotes or a logo for me and then ask me for money? Or are you a real person? I mean, I suppose those people are real people too, but not really real. So Spain fell after being so high because they allowed tyranny in. See in France all intellectual vigor dying under the tyranny of the 17th century, to revive in splendor as liberty awoke in the 18th. And on the enfranchisement of French peasants in the Great Revolution, basing the wonderful strength that has in our time defied defeat. Shall we not trust her? In our time, as in times before, creep on the insidious forces that, producing inequality, destroy liberty. On the horizon the clouds begin to lower. Liberty calls to us again. We must follow her further. We must trust her fully. Either we must wholly accept her, or she will not stay. It is not enough that men should vote. It is not enough that they should be theoretically equal before the law. They must have liberty to avail themselves of the opportunities and means of life. They must stand on equal terms with reference to the bounty of nature. Either this, or liberty withdraws her light. Either this, or darkness comes on, and the very forces that progress has evolved turn to powers that work destruction. This is the universal law. This is the lesson of the centuries. Unless its foundations be laid in justice, the social structure cannot stand. Our primary social adjustment is a denial of justice. In allowing one man to own the land on which and from which other men must live, we have made them his bondsmen in a degree which increases as material progress goes on. This is the subtle alchemy that in ways they do not realize is extracting from the masses in every civilized country the fruits of their weary toil, that is instituting a harder and more hopeless slavery in place of that which has been destroyed, that is bringing political despotism out of political freedom, and must soon transmute democratic institutions into anarchy. Ian says, it is not enough that men should vote. I'm going to say George would have been pro-sortition. He definitely says some pretty damning things about democracy. We just read that yesterday, that, democracy where men are slaves is just enabling of tyranny. I just heard some weird sound nearby. I also want to reach out to W.E. Perry from the Henry George School of Social Sciences, because in the last lecture he gave to the Henry George School of Social Science, he spoke of town halls as being his preferred form of governance, and they're the ones who ought to be deciding what to do with the funds from a land value tax. And so I was going to ask him if he is familiar with sortition. We're at 1840. Into anarchy. We got, do we go for it? Why not? Sorry. It is this that turns the blessings of material progress into a curse. It is this that crowds human beings into noisome cellars and squalid tenement houses, that fills prisons and brothels, that goads men with want and consumes them with greed, that robs women of the grace and beauty of perfect womanhood. Yeah, it's not fun to talk about, but prostitution is the oldest trade, and that's women who are financially desperate, and it's probably one of the worst ways to live. would be living as a prostitute. That takes from little children the joy and innocence of life's morning. What's funny is, we don't force children to labor anymore. Yet I think it's not even clear if they would rather work these low wage jobs rather than go to high school. Of course, we don't make anybody have to work, 100-hour weeks for at a starvation wage with all of the like regulatory um like it we have a lot of good band-aids and we staunch our wounds in the USA fairly well. But I think the USA and Western civilization in general can't really just say that, we tend our own well and that's fine. We are responsible for uh, all the conditions of all of the global industry that we participate in. There are still little children whose joy and innocence of life's morning are being absolutely robbed worldwide, and that is a cause of their land being taken from them. And we do that by spreading democracy, but the democracy that we spread is a landlording democracy. Ian says, prostitutes sell their body, but so do physical laborers. All occupations that ask us to trade our health for the means of subsistence is terribly extortionate. Are terribly extortionate. Yeah. Yeah, civilization so based cannot continue. And it didn't fully because of all of the half solutions, or I don't know if even half solutions is what I would call it. I just band-aids, band-aids, band-aids. I say it so often now. I don't know what else to describe all of the labor laws, antitrust laws, welfare, medical care, insurance industry, pharmaceutical industry, law, all the regulations over these are just, they patched us up and we have continued in not quite an egregious form, but it's just a lifeline. The eternal laws of the universe forbid it. Ruins of dead empires testify, and the witness that is in every soul answers that it cannot be. It is something grander than benevolence, something more august than charity. It is justice herself that demands of us to right this wrong. Justice that will not be denied, that cannot be put off. Justice that with the scales carries the sword. Shall we ward the stroke with liturgies and prayers? Shall we avert the decrees of immutable law by raising churches when hungry infants moan and weary mothers weep? Some of these those band-aids serve the interests of large monopolists. Big firms can absorb regulatory burden while small firms are crushed. Yes, I 100% agree. You have this vicious cycle, which I think I'm going to write my next blog post talking about this again, because I wrote a blog post called Big Blog. I don't know if you read that one. Maybe you did read that one and liked it. But I think a number of my friends, they're like, oh, that one was too long. But you have the vicious cycle of big company can hide away its misdeeds and mistreatment with all of their funds. And so the only way to rein in, like the examples I give is, if there's a little local taco stand nearby and they serve bad meat, well, you're not going to go to that taco stand anymore. Maybe a number of local people got sick, but they all know each other, they talk about it. That little taco stand is going to get no more business and it suffers. Um, it's called Big Blog. And so, in the case of a small taco stand, when they do a bad thing, it doesn't have a huge effect, and they'll quickly feel the consequences of that. But when that little taco stand becomes a giant Taco Bell taco chain, because they can hire a bunch of wage slaves, or some landlord with a bunch of money can who really so there's a landlord nearby who likes this taco stand, and they're like, oh, what we should do is we should just copy this taco stand everywhere, and using all of our land that we own, we'll have taco stands everywhere, and we'll hire a bunch of wage slaves. And then if somebody gets us, we serve some bad meat, well, we have billions of dollars, so we can fight it in court. We can hush them. We can keep it on the down low, and uh, maybe not reform our practices or whatever. And if Taco Bell nationwide starts serving bad meat, the ill effects are going to be nationwide, or much much bigger problem. And so, what can dare to compete with a nationwide billion-dollar company? Well, that's when you need to go to the government, the power of the sword, to constrain them so that they can't be so vile. And yet, once you do that, you create regulation, and so then there's regulatory capture. And so that makes it even more difficult for a new taco stand to try to compete. That's why all the taco stands around here, they're not legal. They get kicked off their corners. They can't compete. And yet, do I want to let Taco Bell not have, um, should there not be inspections on every Taco Bell? Uh, I think that they would start serving bad meat, cheap, cheap bad meat. And who should pay for those inspections? Well, somehow it makes it harder to, yeah. Anyway, so that's the cycle, or a part of the cycle. No, I have to be strict. I'm gonna end here today. We're at 28 minutes and 40 seconds and counting. All right. See you next time. Ending recording. I'll hang out for a few more minutes. I just type up my little summary and then submit it. What brings you to the stream I guess this is later. Yeah, it's 2 o'clock. I guess I had a dentist appointment this morning. Um, so yeah, it's not morning. Life is hard enough without having to deal with wage slavery. Um, do we not trust liberty anymore? We have made it to chapter 5. Doing paperwork. Paperwork. Gotcha. This is where we've left off. Here in chapter 5, the central truth. Um, we were promised liberty, liberty. We have only had but a small taste. The loss of liberty results in the loss of wealth and goodness, and has preceded the fall of all empires. Bam. In the dentist office, I briefly read some of Albert J. Nock's memoirs. Still haven't really gotten to the part where he actually talks about Georgism. However, he did, I guess this was yesterday when I was reading. Or was it this morning? There was this line about serpents treat each other better than humans treat one another. And when he first read that as a boy, he thought it was pretty wrong because he had only seen like pretty idyllic communities that he had grown up in. But then he commented that he was wrong and that this was the correct observation, and that George, like, he listed a few people who he said saw this clearly, and he said like George mostly saw it, but it sounded like he thought George didn't quite see it fully, and that maybe, I don't know, felt like it was like a slight hint that he thought maybe George overestimates, not searching YouTube, just go to YouTube, the nobility of man. I don't know, but it was only a little hint. I haven't heard of this game yet. What have we got here? Minute 18 trailer. I like the music. Car-brained, baby. I mean, road trips are pretty great. But if you go on one road trip every couple of years, if that. But it is fun to have your own car for that. It's your little ship. Have I ever tried bike touring though? No, I haven't. I have not biked that much. I was over the summer doing I was doing like a once a week bike ride to the beach and back, which is about 30 miles. Um, Also, this is kind of like you're by yourself in all of these. I have done I guess I've done one solo road trip across the US, although I have my dog. I would sort of be interested in bike touring, but I'm not interested in getting run over. It's scary enough. Biking along the riverbed. Actually, that biking along the riverbed's not scary at all, but it's very limited where the riverbed goes. Notably, it goes where the river goes. And I don't know. I guess when I have biked with other friends, it's like a little tougher to chat with friends. It would be different, but I'm sure I do like camping, so I'm sure there would be some trade-offs. It probably would be pretty good if you had a group of friends. Um, yeah, maybe I'll look into that. All right, we are just about done here. They are transformative, would recommend. Less comfortable, longer, but you also feel the changing landscape, and there's more opportunities for adventure stories. I believe, I believe that. You make it sound quite good. And you've yet to lead me astray. Mm. Who do you go biking with? Do you live in an area where you grew up? All right. Not that anyone watches these uh, videos, but I won't dox you. I just think the name of your hometown is fun to say. All right, uploaded, closed, my to-do list. Yeah. There is, man, is it somewhere in here? Um, this is the Albert J. Nock memoirs. This is my dental I got gum disease, man. It's bringing me down. Um, yeah, I don't even want to, I don't know, somewhere in here, I think it's in here. He talks about like the speed of your travel affects how you perceive its length or yeah, I don't know. Like if you're moving really fast, man, was this from Albert J. Nock? Oh, it was a good quote. Um, you just don't take as much in when you're going as fast, and so it makes the travel feel more tedious. And I remember thinking when I read it, oh, I wonder, he was before air travel, but man, what would he think of air travel? Because it is, pretty tedious to sit there for 5 hours or something going across the U.S. I live near where I grew up. When I was 19, I biked out to the Pacific with my friend. We slummed it, ate out of dumpsters most of the way. Wow. It was brutal but beautiful. Huh. Yeah, I've never done anything like that. I've gone on, I've only done backpacking like once for a few days. And I've I've done road trips up to Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, several times, and I've done road trips to Boston and back, and Tennessee and back. Um, yeah, and up to San Francisco a few other times from here. It's about 8 hours one way. Yeah, I don't like over the summer when I was biking to the beach, I popped a few tires and I've had to just had a friend pick me up and we took it to or I just drove my bike to a bike shop to have it the tire replaced and I would have to learn how to or buy those like tools to learn how to do that on the go, I guess. Um, but all right, I'll bike up to you and we'll go for a bike tour. All right, thanks for hanging out. See ya.